70% of women initiate divorce. Generally, couples wait 6 years before they actually divorce. It costs the average couple £44,000 to get divorced. Worse than that, on average, it was taking people 69 weeks to go from petition to decree absolute or final order, as we call them now. 69 weeks. That's 1.5 years. And 44 grand. The family law market exceeded, for the first time last year, £2 billion. You see people going through horrendous divorces of endless delays, spiraling costs, and a process that is really, really slow. And we really felt that what was missing from most people's divorces was that sense of control. The dirty secret in family law is that family law is pretty formulaic. There is some discretion with judges. We have a methodology that we use in order to assess how assets might be split, and that's all it is. All of the other chatter around who did what or when or how, that has got nothing to do with it. If you get the finance sorted out, everything else falls into place. Only 3% of people will go to a trusted financial advisor during the separation stage. The first thing I would do, if my husband said to me today, I want to separate, this is what I would do.
Today, our guest is Karen Arndt, co-founder of whatwouldaJudgeSay.com, a UK law tech startup changing how we think about divorce. Karen's background is in global media and tech, not law. That's exactly what makes her approach so refreshing. Her team built a platform that gives separating and divorcing couples a judge's opinion on how their assets would be divided without going to court. Quick disclaimer, everything we talk about here should be double-checked with a lawyer or financial advisor in your own country. Laws and rules can vary, so always get advice that's tailored to you. Great. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. It'd be great if you could tell us a bit about yourself and why you launched whatwouldaJudgeSay.com.
Yeah, I just wanted to say what his journey is doing is absolutely fantastic, and we support it wholeheartedly. We get a 50-50 men, women that contact us, but a lot of the men are really concerned about the finances. I hear a lot of sweary lawyers complaining about the process and everything else. What I wanted to do with you today was share that perspective, give you the insider view of what judges, barristers, lawyers, what would they do if they were finding themselves in a separation or divorcing situation. It's quite an interesting insight, and I think that, our conversation today will be quite interesting for people to listen to. Also, I have to say, I have been divorced myself, been on the other side of the table, so to speak, and it was absolutely a horrible experience. And I went through a collaborative divorce. Me and my husband had a very amicable separation. We sat down, we wrote down what we thought each other should get, went to see collaborative lawyers. You could almost feel them kind of nudging you into various different corners. That was nearly 20 years ago. I think things have improved since then, but there's certainly a long way to go.
How did you come up with the idea of what would a judge say? And if you wouldn't mind talking around the concept.
Yeah, definitely. When we launched What Would a Judge Say, that was because we saw that the system was broken. It's not just broken on a firm level, but it's also within the process, within the whole judicial system. It just doesn't work for people. You see people going through horrendous divorces of endless delays, spiraling costs, and a process that is really, really slow. And we really felt that what was missing from most people's divorces was that sense of control. Most people that you talk to, they're starting the horrible divorce process. I've got no idea how long I'm in for this or how much it's going to cost me. Nobody can give me a straight answer on anything. Things have got to be better than that. There must be a faster route through that chaos. If you look at the traditional way, each party gets their own lawyer and then they allow those lawyers to do the talking for them. What if we asked a different question? What if you didn't have to guess what a judge would say. On the first day of your divorce, people always ask, what would a judge say? If I went in front of a judge today, what would that judge say? And you get lots of vague answers from lawyers, and it's never clear. What if you flip it? What if we could just ask a judge right now for you? And what would we need to show that judge in order for that judge to be able to tell you, this is what the law says, that's your situation, and that's, if you will, a kind of judicial roadmap that you're looking at. So rather than seeing the judge as the end goal, you're talking to the judge right at the start. We spoke to law firms and we said, can we do that? Is that possible to do? And they said, oh yeah, that's possible. That's been around since 2012. It's called an early neutral evaluation. Why don't people know that on day one, you can actually go to a senior barrister or a judge who can literally map out your situation for you? And they said, well, that early neutral evaluation really goes against how law firms work commercially. It's not in the law firm's interests to tell you that up front. So we said, right, we're going to call it whatwouldaJudgeSay.com, and we're going to deliver you the answer to that question. The question being, how would a judge split my assets in divorce? And that's it.
I'm thinking about a metaphor for my male audience. You've got two boxers go into a ring and they could slug it out and one would be decided as the winner. Your business is effectively taking the judges of the fight and saying who is likely to win, what do we know about all the fighters, and then saying, oh, we think this person's going to win. No single punches thrown, no damage done. You just cut right to the end.
It is 100%. We keep waiting for what I call the better angels of lawyers to step in and kind of say, there's a much easier way. For example, in Germany, they have fixed fees. So you can't do that. In Germany, it's against the law to do that. Lawyers aren't allowed to do that. But in the UK, in England and Wales, it's almost like a never-ending level of units, they call them. If you're in this divorce ecosystem, you all know all about units, and they are segments of time that you spend, and your lawyer spends time listening to you on the phone, talking about whatever issues you have, writing long letters, reading long letters from the other side, and so that tennis match goes on between the two lawyers. The whole system is rigged against you, the client, because you just have to keep on, paying these fees, these spiraling fees. What if we, A, went straight to a judge, right? B, what if we did it within a fixed period of time? We ask you to fill in your financial disclosure. That's all we need. We don't need to know the ins and outs of who did what in your marriage. No-fault divorce is prevalent here in the UK, which is great. By the way, I got an email this morning saying it's the third birthday of the no-fault divorce here in the UK.
Oh, wow.
It's
So it's very recent.
Yeah. And as a legal concept, that was fantastic because you take a lot of the psychology out of it in a way, because you're just focusing on the legal concept rather than, a no-fault divorce gives you that. You're not focused on who behaved badly in the relationship or who had an affair or all of that.
For those that don't know what a no-fault divorce is versus what it was before, can you just elaborate on that?
So bad behavior was included, that was discussed, chewed over, who did what, and that's what used to clog up the courts with all of this focus on how people behaved during their marriage. When no-fault divorce came in 3 years ago, no-fault divorce then said, we're taking all of that out. The dirty secret in family law is that family law is pretty formulaic. We have a methodology that we use in order to assess how assets might be split, and that's all it is. All of the other chatter around who did what or when or how, that has got nothing to do with it. If you get the finance sorted out early and first, it opens doors to conversations about the children and then the divorce paperwork. Every lawyer and every judge that I have spoken to has said to me, Karen, if you get the finance sorted out, everything else falls into place. And if you forget anything in this entire podcast, I would say get that sorted out first. We've heard horror stories of people using children as pawns, negotiating, using the kids as leverage. That's a big no-no. Judges hate that. Do not do that. But you get that finance sorted. The only thing that I would say with the finance is that you do have to go through the financial disclosure, which can be quite painful to do. It's quite an analysis on your entire life. If you've ever tried to put a dollar value on your life, that's what it does. It's the number one stumbling block for people that are going through divorce. Filling that financial disclosure form in can be quite daunting.
To prepare that, would they usually need to engage with a financial advisor, or is that something you could do yourself?
Yeah, if you step back from divorce and just look at separation, what do you do if your partner says to you, look, that's it, I want to separate? You're not even in divorce territory at this stage. You're just in that separation phase, which can be absolutely horrible. 70% of women initiate divorce. So a lot of men are sitting there dumbfounded, totally thrown into this awful situation where their partner is saying, I think that we need to separate. And what do you do in that situation? There's loads of information out there on the internet about divorce and what you should do, but you're not in that stage yet. You've just been told by a partner, I think we should separate. What do you do in that situation? We have a lot of we call them IFAs, they're independent financial advisors, absolutely brilliant financial guys. And they will say to me that they're amazed that more people don't give them a call at that stage, at that separation stage. Because that's the stage when people need a little bit of support. They need to also protect themselves. There's something called financial infidelity. And financial infidelity is whereby you rack up a load of debt in your partner's name. That can be absolutely awful. There's some awful things that can happen in that separation stage. I don't want to spook anyone that's watching this, but really, it's really important, I would say, to talk to an IFA really quickly. Now, if your spouse has said to you, look, I think we should separate, your first port of call isn't always your financial advisor. But financial advisors have said to me that only 3% of people will go to a trusted financial advisor during the separation stage. And financial advisors have said to me, why is that? Why don't people give us a call? We can help you. We'll sit down with you for an hour, because a lawyer can't take you through financial advice. That's really important. Lawyers can't give you financial advice. But when you first go through that separation phase, you need to step back, take a look at your joint bank accounts. What kind of debt do you have? Which account is servicing your weekly bills, your monthly cost, your quarterly cost, your mortgage, your school fees, your car, all of these things still need to be paid. And this is where people tend to make mistakes. They will leave the house. They will say, okay, if you want to separate, I'm going to leave and I'm not going to pay the mortgage. The financial advisors tell me that's like the number one thing that you absolutely should not do. Financial advisors can sit down and they can talk you through a little checklist. That means that you're just safeguarding your finance, but you're also making sure that your credit rating is being protected, because all your main bills are being paid and there's no ambiguity with your partner as to who should pay what. So in the UK, we have a free service called the Vulnerability Registration Service. And the Vulnerability Registration Service is a horrible name. It kind of suggests that, you need to be elderly or infirm to have this service, but it's not. It's also used for people that want to protect themselves during that separation phase. And what that does, it just puts a flag against your name. It's voluntary. You sign in for this. And then banks and lenders always have to double check with you if something has come in against your name. It's an absolutely fantastic service. And it's a bit like a digital security guard. And your partner doesn't need to know that you've done that, because if that loan gets refused, your partner does not hear, well, it's because your partner's on the vulnerability registration service. And it's just a way just to make sure that things are running as you would expect them to during that separation phase. We had one guy who's married for 25 years. Unbeknown to him, his wife had taken out a load of loans against his name, and it only came out during the financial disclosure during the divorce. All of a sudden, there's all this debt against his name that he wasn't aware of. It's really quite important and gives you some peace of mind. And during that separation phase, That's sometimes when, it's under the radar. You're not expecting your partner to do anything like that. And if you get back together again at the end of it, and people do during that separation phase, no harm done. There's absolutely no harm done. You haven't spoken to a lawyer, but you have just put some processes in place that will help you get through that separation phase. Now, we've put a checklist on our website that kind of shows you a little bit as to some of the things that you could do to protect yourself during that time. But obviously, as you mentioned earlier, Robin, do check with your own financial advisor in your own country just to make sure that that's a good idea. Really important as well, just to mention about the difference between separation and divorce, because there is a difference between the two. When you're going through that separation phase, it's not often that people jump straight into divorce. One of the statistics that we heard from Relate, so Relate are a couples counselling service in the UK, and they say generally couples wait 6 years before they actually divorce. So during this 6 years, you've been through, arguments, you've been through counselling, you've been through a period of separation, and after 6 years, you might then say, right, I'm ready for divorce. So already, before you've even started the divorce process, our business is divorced. By the time they contact us, they are absolutely exhausted, they're on the floor, and then they've got to go through this horrible divorce process. So, that separation, that 6 years that Relate tell us of the ups and downs of the relationship is pretty awful to go through. Separation, in some countries, I believe in Australia, for example, you've got to go through a period of separation before you can actually apply to divorce. In the UK, we don't have that. In the UK, we have some interesting rules around separation. So if you're listening to this from the UK, you can separate within the same house. So if you still decide to live together, but there are some rules around that, you're not allowed to sleep together, you're not allowed to have sex with each other, you're not allowed to cook with each other.
Wow.
And these are questions that get asked when you're applying for divorce. If you say that you've had a period of separation, these are some of the things that people get asked. So you have that separation phase, and then you have the phase of divorce, and the divorce generally is where you go straight through to the decree of ending your marriage. So it's really quite a distinction between separation and divorce. There are sort of cooling off periods within the divorce process within the UK. I would say we've got 3 guys that call us, right? But we've got guys that are part of a couple that come to us that say, look, as a couple, we're coming to what would a judge say as a couple. Then we've got individual men that say, look, my spouse doesn't know I'm calling you. I don't know if I can afford to get divorced. I just want to know what my financial position would look like in a divorce. And then thirdly, we've got this interesting one where guys are calling us and saying, I'm in a horrible litigation for 2 years now. I don't trust my lawyers. My spouse is trying to run rings around me. The fees are out of control. I actually want to use what would a judge say so that I can make a meaningful offer to the other side. To really, to do it on my own here. I obviously know the full marital pot. I can do a full financial disclosure here. I can give you that, and we can come back with what a judge would say. So those are the 3 guys that are calling us.
So Karen, we've talked about separation. Can you talk us through divorce? What do we mean by divorce? How much does a divorce typically cost?
Yeah, so what we decided to do is kind of step back from divorce and kind of say, what is it that we're talking about here? There's a lot of misleading information about what does a divorce cost. And so we said, okay, we'll pull it apart, we'll look under the bonnet, and we'll see what we're talking about. The 3 elements of divorce are, you've got the divorce paperwork, the divorce proceedings, if you will. That's the legal bit. You can almost do that yourself now. Certainly in the UK, you can do it online, you can do it solo, you can do it joint. You can be divorced quite quickly, but you might not have got the finance and the kids sorted out. I find that putting the cart before the horse. I would say that's not good to start with that. The other element of divorce is the children. So the children arrangements, and most parents, I would say, sort that out themselves. And people, especially dads, get really nervous about this, about the children arrangements, because often one partner might use the kids as leverage if they feel they're not getting anything on the finance side. Dads really shouldn't get nervous about that. Judges are really good at picking up on that. And then the other element of divorce is the financial arrangements, that financial remedy. When you decide to get a divorce, that's going to be what we call a consent order. Within the consent order, there's something called a statement of information. And that statement of information has all your current and future financial positions. Everybody's consent order in England and Wales goes through the court if you want to get divorced. The judge will look at that and just make sure that that's fair and that the needs of the children are met. The most contentious part of a divorce by far is that financial element. This is why we said we've got to get that most contentious part of the divorce out of the way as quick as we can. And so the way that I would do it, if I was getting divorced tomorrow, I would do the finance first, I'd do the children second, and then I'd do the divorce paperwork third. Now, a lot of lawyers that you talk to, they say, well, we just mix it all up. But in my view, that just muddies the waters. And then you have all that back and forth with the kids and everything else. What does a divorce cost? You've got companies out there in the UK that are offering divorces for 550 quid. And they don't mean that. They're misleading. What they mean is we'll do your paperwork for 550 quid. But they don't mean that they'll sort out the finance and the kids, because there's a lot of fees involved. But that 550 quid is misleading. It's a bit like, offering a holiday without giving the flights. It's like turning up at the airport and, oh, well, we didn't give you the flights, we just got the holiday. That's really misleading. And if you see ads for that, you should really check what part of the divorce are you talking about for 550 quid. That's a really good question to ask. The other part of it, the finance and the kids, what does that cost? Now, that's considerably more. Aviva did some research 10 years ago in 2014, and they saw that it costs the average couple £44,000 to get divorced. That's the whole thing. Worse than that, the UK Family Law Trends report in 2024 said that on average, it was taking people 69 weeks to go from petition to decree absolute or final order, as we call them now. 69 weeks. That's 1.5 years. And 44 grand. And what really stings, when I tell people this, they can't believe it. You're paying for this. You're paying not only with your time, but also with your fees. The family law market exceeded, for the first time last year, £2 billion. It increases every year. It's increased 4.5%, 5%, 6% the year before that. It is growing. And why is it growing? It's growing because it's an antiquated system which has a commercial view on running it through to the end. You have no idea when you start a divorce how long it's going to take or what it's going to cost. With what would a judge say? We said, we'll do it in 6 weeks and we'll do it for a fixed fee. It costs you £5,000, £5,000, 2.5 grand per person. It's that trickle thing of, you're just paying it, you're paying it over 69 weeks. And if you knew at the start what you know at the end, you absolutely wouldn't do that.
Even if you arrived to an agreement on asset split with your lawyers and then took it to the final court order, they can still overrule it. It's at that point the judge says, no, this is not fair to this individual, and they can change the outcome. So that 69 weeks could be a lot of wasted time and money to get a different outcome at the court based on what would a judge say.
Exactly. And as I said, the law is quite formulaic. Our judges operate within that law. They'll tell you right at the start, that's what you'll get, that's what you'll get. And so you can decide right at the start what you want to do. And we have had quite a few people that have said, okay, I've received my opinion. The judge doesn't just give you a magic number. What the judge will do is the judge will give you a range, because we believe, and judges believe, that couples have agency. You should be able to talk with each other within that range. And I've been a trader, I've been a negotiator myself. I don't know any other negotiation in life where you're negotiating all your worldly goods without having parameters in place. And that's what the judge does. The judge shows you, these are the goalposts. That's the range that you've got. So what happens after that is that we have a number of people saying, yeah, that makes sense, Karen. I like that. We're going to take the midpoint within that range, and that's how we're going to split it. That's fine. Some couples say to us, well, I'm not too happy with that, Karen. We've got some more talking to do here. What do? We have some absolutely fantastic mediators. Not as part of our organization, but we partner up with them. One of them in particular is absolutely fantastic on financial remedy. She's an ex-solicitor. She understands the process. She's a trained mediator, and she can sit down with a couple and she can kind of work out, okay, where's the sting in the tail? Let's work through this. The other set of couples, they say, well, I'm not happy with this at all, and I don't want to go to a mediator. I don't want to go to an arbitrator with this. I'm going to take my bundle and I'm going to go to a lawyer, separate lawyer, and I'm going to fight it out in court. And I say, okay, good luck to you. You're going to spend 44 grand, and 69 weeks later, you've probably got the same judgment in front of you. You have those three sets of reactions when you get the opinion. It's a really good kind of heads up of that's what it looks like.
Absolutely. If I want to get my financial position sorted, I go to you. What would a judge say? If I need a mediator to help me negotiate and settle disputes with my partner that are maybe less financial and more emotional, I go to a mediator. And then I also need a financial advisor as well as the person to help me prepare for the financial position.
Exactly. But if I had a best friend that was going through a separation or a divorce, the first thing I'd say to them is, all right, let's get your team around you. Let's see what we need to resolve. What are the key questions that we need to resolve here? And as you've said, a lot of it is, it's finances, kids, and it's the emotional side of it. What you do is absolutely fantastic at his journey. You let men talk about the situation. That whole sense of identity has changed for them, and you can't ignore that. We are the dry financial side of it, whereas you are absolutely fantastic in giving men a voice to be able to grieve, to talk, to share their stories, to get that new identity for themselves, and that's super important. So there's a number of professionals that can help you, as we've just said. So you can come to us for the finance, brilliant mediators for the children, absolutely fantastic mediators for the finance as well, just in case you need to iron out some more of that finance once you've got your opinion. And then, as I say, there's a couple of other people as well. There's that financial advisor that can help. And then there are also divorce coaches now. We've got quite a few divorce coaches that are absolutely fantastic. We've got some that specialize in women and some that specialize in men, because, men going through this, as we know, go through quite a different experience than women. So divorce coaches are really coming into their own now, and they can talk you through the process as well.
Unless you've been through it before, it's also very bewildering. Where do I start? Who do I need to talk to? What do I do first? It's a difficult process for most men and women to go through. Would you be able to break it down in simple terms? What are the first things as a man I should do to protect myself if I start the separation process?
You need to separate your income. The first thing I would do, if my husband said to me today, I want to separate, this is what I would do. I would first of all separate my income. I would redirect my income into a new bank account just to make sure that's all in a separate place. Then I'd look at all my joint bank accounts with my spouse. The first thing I would do is I absolutely put a maximum on how much you can transfer out of that joint account. This is something that I would sit down with my spouse about, no matter the emotion or what's gone on before, we need to look at the joint bank accounts just to make sure that we both understand there's a kind of different reality now. I don't want you taking out £1,000 without me knowing about it. I would also get a piece of paper or, fire up the Excel spreadsheet and list all of your assets and debts. And if you can do it with your partner, brilliant. But list them as far as you know them. And then the other thing was just making sure that bills are being paid. Who's paying what? When? Take a close look at which account is currently servicing all your household expenses. Your mortgage, your rent, utilities, car payments, school fees, anything on a regular cycle, because in both your interests not to ruin your credit rating. Because believe me, the mortgage company does not care whether you're separating or not, whether you're going through a bad time or not. The mortgage company or your landlord just cares about, are you paying your rent or not? And if you decide, I'm not going to pay the bills, I'm just going to walk away, that's it. All you're doing is you're cutting your nose off to spite your face, because later on when you're trying to get a mortgage or trying to get a new rental, that goes against your name. Your credit rating has gone down. That is actually one of the first things that I would do. I would check my credit rating straight away. And there are ways in the UK that you can separate your credit rating from your partner's, from your spouse. It's making sure your bills are being paid, and then also making sure that that account account is being topped up every single month, so that minimum cover those bills is going into that account that covers it. You need to be really quite clear so there's no misunderstandings with your partner as to how those bills are going to get paid. How everything else works, that's fine, but it's just making sure that those main bills are being paid. All IFAs tell me, don't be embarrassed, just give me a call. I can help you budget with the new reality. I mean, how do you run two households with one income if only one has been earning? How do you do that? Where do you move to? How does that work? And an IFA can sit down with you. And honestly, financial advisors, they've seen it all before. So there's nothing to be embarrassed about. They will welcome that. If you give them a call and say, look, wants to separate, we're going through counseling, we're trying to sort things out, but I would just like to make sure that I'm doing two things. I want to avoid any confusion or panic spending or assumptions about who's paying what. You can't assume anything. Within that separation phase, you cannot assume anything. And then secondly, we want to make sure that things are done in a calm way, in a structured way. And an IFA will be able to help you with that. I'm probably the only person in the legal services industry which is telling you not to go see a lawyer. Most people that I speak to say, right, I've got a lawyer upright. And I say, no. In this separation phase, hold your horses. Let's just step back calmly and just see where we are. There's normally, within a couple, there's one person who does the finances. And in a lot of couples I've spoken to, it's actually the women that do the finances. They'll do the finances every month. And the guy might be the high earner. That does happen. But they have no clue about what do we spend on Sky? What do we spend on everything? And that's the point that you've got to get involved. You've got to get involved in the finances. If you can get the finances sorted, get your financial disclosure sorted, it's actually quite a calming, cathartic way to get through this. Because actually, most people have said to me, I actually feel better now I did this. It was a pain in the ass, Karen. I hated every minute of it. But actually looking at it now, I feel better about it. You get a good financial advisor, they can definitely help with that.
That's really good advice. Can you tell me about alternative dispute resolution? How does it work?
It's super important. Alternative dispute resolution basically means that you're going to try and resolve things out of court. It's a lengthy process and it's horrible and all the fees and everything else. And, we're waiting for the better angels of law firms to come forward. It's not just law firms, it's also the process. The judicial process is actually getting better, and they are doing things to improve the whole legal process for people that are going through divorce. They've come up with the ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, and within the ADR toolbox, there's about 5 things. First one is mediation. As that name suggests, you've got a mediator there that's talking, trying to find some common ground. They don't have any skin in the game. They're a total neutral, and they can help you. And that's with the couple sitting together with a mediator. The other one is an arbitrator. That arbitrator is like a private judge, and that arbitrator's ruling is final and binding. So you both agree as a couple, we'll go to an arbitrator, we'll put our points forward, and that arbitrator will make a decision. It can be, a senior barrister that would act as an arbitrator. You often find that in some of the chambers that we deal with. The other part about ADR is collaborative law, and collaborative law is where, again, you have gone to separate lawyers, but there's something in the UK called resolution. And if you are a resolution lawyer, then you have signed up to be a collaborative lawyer, and you've signed up to a set of guidelines that you as a lawyer will follow. So you will not be combative. You will actually be seeking actively to resolve things. And so collaborative law works very well. Within ADR, you also have something new, relatively new. I've seen more and more couples using this now, and that's called one couple, one lawyer approach. If as a couple, you've worked it out yourself, things are quite amicable, you've got a bit of paper, you've worked out, okay, you get that, I get that, and just want to go ratify that, you want to use one lawyer, that lawyer can help you, and that is great. I really like that approach. That's becoming quite a popular way to resolve things as well. And then number 5, this is for the ultra high net worth couples that I've seen, and this is where you get what they call a private FDR, that's a financial dispute resolution. That's where basically you hire a judge for a day, and that's super expensive, as you can imagine. So each party would get their own lawyer, their own barrister. They turn up to a private FDR, which might be in the chambers for one of the couples, and that might be a retired judge, might be a senior barrister that sits as a judge during that day. It's a non-binding ruling, but from that, each couple can go away and create a consent order, which is good. With one consent order, that's almost like the contract that's created at the end of it. Private FDRs, I mean, they can cost between 30 and 50K, so that's quite expensive. So you sometimes find that with, complex portfolios or high value business assets and things like that. But private FDRs in the UK are now becoming a little bit more mainstream. So the price is coming down, and so you see people that are sort of in the upper range, not in the ultra high net worth, but in the upper range. They're trying private FDRs now as well. That's really what the ADR toolbox comprises of. Also, 1 year old. April 2024, there was something passed called the Pre-Action Protocol. And the Pre-Action Protocol put forward to say you can no longer go to court without having tried one of these ADR methods first. And the reason why they've done that is because costs are spiraling, but also, more importantly, the courts are absolutely clogged. They're clogged with backlogs, delays, and courts are now saying, you can't say to your partner, right, I don't care, I'll see you in court and I'll spend hundreds of thousands of pounds in legal fees because I don't care. And so the judicial system now is saying, no, you can no longer do that. In England and Wales, the Pre-Action Protocol states, and I quote, that parties must always bear in mind the court's overriding objective, which is to resolve cases justly, quickly, fairly, and without unnecessary cost. And that is the essence of the Pre-Action Protocol that the MOJ now insist upon. It's very, very powerful. And so as a result, interestingly, what would a judge say fits in beautifully with the Pre-Action Protocol, because we are alternative to court, we are fixed fees, and that protocol's goal of being proportionate in terms of cost is exactly what we deliver. So
that's amazing. It's good validation for your business because the government wouldn't have legislated that if it weren't a systemic problem. You're part of the solution to addressing that, just like the legislation is.
What we're doing is so important. Move things along quicker at a fixed price, and people know where they stand, which is absolutely fantastic. Somebody was saying to me the other day, you do know that you're going to get a huge market backlash, don't you? And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well,
right.
law firms are going to hate you. And I said, yeah, I'm well aware of that. We're almost like the Uber of judges. That's what we kind of see ourselves as. We don't stand in the way of judges. We make it really simple, streamline it, use tech where we need to, but have real human judges. Judges think this is absolutely fantastic. I spoke to one a couple of weeks ago that said, why didn't someone do this before? But it does feel as if with the Pre-Action Protocol, with the technology available to us now, and with the fact that we've partnered up with an absolutely fantastic family law firm that has access to the most brilliant judges in the world, and I'm talking world-class judges, which we use, we almost facilitate that whole process for you. We're not a law firm, but we do act as if we are a law firm because we also believe that, security and confidentiality is absolutely key.
What is your future client?
Richard Susskind has written this. He is one of the best analysts and predictor of the evolution of the legal marketplace that there is. Right? And Richard Susskind says there are three things that the future client wants. Number one is choice. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. At the moment, the traditional thing is that you go to that lawyer at the start of your divorce and you go through right to the end. After 6 weeks, you're still with the same lawyer. Susskind says that's not going to happen in the future. You're going to be able to choose different services depending on what part of the divorce journey you're on. So he's saying, if you're in the finance part of your divorce, you're going to find more and more divorce services related to finance. I'm pretty sure there's more and more competitors going to come along. I think that there's going to be more competition in this area. Richard Susskind says, whatever part of the divorce journey you're on, you'll be able to choose from a set of really good firms or companies that will be able to help with that. Number 2 is participation. So he says that clients are going to be actively involved. Clients are no longer just going to be passengers in their own divorce. I thought that was a really good way to put it. You're no longer going to be ping pong between lawyers not knowing what the hell's going on. You're going to be a full participant in it. And then third of all, most importantly, I think, is transparency. That's clear outcomes, clear timeline, clear costs, and no jargon. Clients of the future are not going to put up with that at all. They're not going to put up with this, we're going to kick it in the long grass, but in the meantime, you're going to pay all of these fees and wait all of this time. So that's a really interesting look into the future, I think.
It sounds very relevant because people are so empowered by ChatGPT. They can read legal jargon, they can get legal advice themselves. It's a much different world than it was 2 years ago.
Absolutely. And I actually got talking to a very big family law firm a couple of weeks ago at a law conference. And I said, do you think I'm going to eat your lunch? You haven't been paying attention, because ChatGPT and Gemini is going to eat your lunch. Gemini is making huge progress. It is now reasoning and it's in real time. And if I can get a GPT to work with me on real time, then that's incredible, because case law comes out every single day. We use Bali in the UK as our source of case law. We're always on Bali. All lawyers are on Bali every single minute, every single day, because new case laws coming in. Now, if I can get an API into Bali with ChatGPT or with Gemini, then that is gold dust. And as I say, at the moment, if you have a number of prompts and you have a situation with your specific divorce, you can ask ChatGPT, what would you do if you are a senior judge in England and Wales? It's not a bad assessment. It's not a bad assessment. It's bringing up relevant case law. It's putting the needs of the child first. And it's also about fairness. And in fact, you were talking earlier about, bias with judges. That's one of the questions we get as well. Karen, what do I do? What would a judge say? It's a pro-wife judge. It's a pro-husband judge. And I say to them, that could happen. But equally, I have seen some bonkers judgments for husbands and for wives. They've gone through 44 grand and 69 weeks later, and then got a terrible judgment out of it just because that particular judge had a particular, I don't want to say bias because I don't want to piss off any judges, but you have bias in judges as well, human judges. There's still bias with GPTs at the moment. There's still an element of hallucination. We know that as well. So really importantly is that the general public is not yet ready for a computer to decide how to split your worldly goods. You still absolutely need that human in the loop.
Right.
Not to say that we're not testing it. So what I would say to you is right now, what would a judge say is purely analog. We are using real solicitors, real barristers, real judges in the mix. That's what your 5 grand fee is paying for. But at the same time, in stealth mode, we've got our tech team working on a GPT, which is hopefully going to think like a super judge. Now, at the moment, that super judge is helping us to brief counsel, to brief the judge, and that's going through real solicitors, going through to the judge. We're using it as a support, but at some point you're going to get that, I don't want to use the word singularity, but you're going to get that situation where the super judge is so good that you're almost going to get an instantaneous response. You're not going to be paying 5 grand for that, and it just democratizes law like you've never seen before. You are getting a fantastic legal brain for a fraction of what it costs now.
The future's right around the corner. I can't wait to see what that's like. But it's really great that your organization's leading that charge and trailblazing into the future of legal AI.
Definitely.
What are the biggest mistakes men make during divorce?
It's different for men and women. So men, I would say there are 4 main mistakes that men tend to make. First of all, thinking the only way is litigation. 70% of women initiate divorces. They may not have seen it coming. So the knee-jerk reaction for men is, right, I'm going to litigate. I need to get a lawyer. I'm going to sort this out. I'm going to get her in court. she's not going to know what's hit her. And I would say, do not do that. That's a massive mistake. You're just going to be paying through the nose for it. You're going to be racking up legal fees because your lawyer is not your psychotherapist. Go and sort it out somewhere else, with a therapist, with a divorce coach, with someone that can help you with that. Do not litigate your way through your feelings. That is mistake number one. Mistake number two is using children as a bargaining chips. Using kids as leverage is one of the worst things you can do. Judges hate it, but not only do judges hate it, but it severs relationships with children as well. Children get spooked by it, and why would you want to do that to your kids? Keep the kids out of it, right? It doesn't work. The third one, you're going to hate me for saying this again, financial disclosure. Men sometimes do poor financial disclosure, or they try and delay it. They think, why do I need to do this? I don't really want to be that transparent about all the elements of my bonus or my pay. Money is the second reason why people separate. First is infidelity, and second is money. When you have this disclosure, or you have poor disclosure, what happens is you tend to try and fudge the numbers, or you're trying to be vague. It really doesn't work because it ruins your credibility on everything else as well. You might as well bite the bullet now, fill it in as best you can, as transparent as you can, and as fully as you can. The other thing was not paying the household bills. That's a big mistake. Most of the time, if the woman has said she wants a divorce or separation, often she's at home with the kids and the guy will leave the house. I've seen that in countless situations where they've actually left the marital home. And when they do that, they say, right, I'm not paying any of the bills. Don't do that. Again, we've talked about that, about the credit rating, and it just harms you. So really don't do that. The problem we have is that everybody has got an opinion on divorce. If you walk into a pub this afternoon and you ask 10 different people, what constitutes a fair divorce, you're going to get 10 different responses. You're going to get 10 different people saying, stay in the house, don't stay in the house. She should pay you because she earns more than you. You should keep your inheritance. You should keep the inheritance separate. Everybody has a view. And so you've got all of this chatter in your head about what you should and shouldn't do. Try not to listen to it. Come to us. We'll go straight to a judge. The judge will tell you exactly what you should and shouldn't be doing. And that judge's advice, that judge's opinion really carries weight. And like I said, it just calms the noise down, and you can just use that as your compass and say, right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to listen to all this lot. I'm going to do that.
Karen, what are the common issues men face going through divorce?
The single biggest issue with men that I have noticed is just silence. Men are silent about what they're going through. And that is the biggest issue, I would say, that level of silence and that identity loss. Who am I if I'm not a husband, if I'm not a daily dad, if I'm not a provider? Who am I? Often they avoid health checks, they stop eating, or they eat too much, they isolate themselves from friends. There are some real issues here because the highest earner is normally the man in the majority of cases. So Oxford University research, they said, in fact, it's the single most damaging event to hit a family outside of death. And I don't think that people are ready for that. I don't think you can be ready for that. When you say ready, men ready for divorce, they're absolutely not ready for it. How could you be ready for such a tsunami? The numbers are quite stark, actually. Women over 50 see their standard of living drop by 45% after divorce, while men only see a 21% decline. So financially, that's the silver lining at the end of it. You might go through a horrible time through your divorce, but actually you come out better in the end. Women tend to fare worse than men at the end of the whole divorce process. Remarriage can soften that blow, especially for men, but many couples don't actually fully recover from that financial blow. The Oxford University research said that they didn't recover, and that their actual wealth trajectory, if you went through a divorce, that slowed down significantly compared to their married counterparts, if that makes sense. So in terms of financial wealth, you're a lot worse off. But especially for men, they might come out of this financially better, but some of them say, what cost, Karen? I've had men come back to me after they've gone through the whole divorce process and say, I've lost day-to-day contact with my kids. I might be okay financially now. I might be on an even footing with my finances, but I'm totally sidelined from my former life. That feeling of isolation that they feel is more acute versus women. Friends do take sides. They say they won't, but they do. It's very awkward for people to have both of us there, events and things like that. Family don't know what to say. Suddenly you're not invited to places. And another thing that they said was divorce is contagious, right? Whereas before you might have been invited out as a couple. Now, as a man on your own, you're no longer invited. And this is what I was saying at the beginning of all of this, is that what you're doing with his journey is so important, because that just creates that tribe of guys that can come together, and they're all, I guarantee it, all going through a similar thing. It's a safe place to people to talk and to realize that they're not going through it alone. There are people out there that understand what they're going through, not just financially, but emotionally as well.
Absolutely. It's a very, very lonely journey for these men. What would your key advice be for men that are going through divorce?
First of all, when you get that news, or you're having that awful conversation with your spouse about separating or divorce, I would say the first thing you do is build a team around you. Call that financial advisor, and then I would say check in with a good solid friend. That is the key. Most men that I've spoken to have said, I needed to have a friend that's not going to make me self-destruct. It makes me quite choked up when I say that. They say that friend meant everything to them going through this. So build your team, give yourself space to grieve. And I use the word grief because it is like what you might call an identity death. You've got to go through that process.
That's right.
Don't try and do it alone, as we said, but do go through that grieving process. And the third of all, get strategic, know your numbers, know what's fair. Even more importantly than anything, just know where you stand. Because actually, you will feel a lot better when you've done that. When you've laid it all out in front of you, you will feel better.
Thank you so much, Karen. This has been a really rich conversation. I've learned so much myself about the legal process and the other experiences of other men and your clients. And I'm so excited about watching your business take on the UK and Wales. And I'm really excited for you to globally expand. I hope that we can continue to partner throughout your global expansion, hopefully down to Australia and into the US. So yeah, that will be a very exciting journey. But very impressed with what you've done and looking forward to hearing
thank
more.
you. Thanks a lot for having me. As I say, it's absolutely fantastic to be able to talk this through with you. If we can help at all, just drop us a line. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Karen.